All right, so I kind of wanted to make a quick video kind of showcasing my computer, kind of how I set up Linux to maximize my ability to not only like do programming, but also learn and kind of just walk through my general workflow that I use in Linux. So to begin with, just for a quick overview of my system, I use Arch Linux. I actually originally had been on Fedora. The reason I ended up switching from Fedora was just that as I got due to doing more and more machine learning related applications, it just started making more sense for me to be on some sort of system where I can maintain a much more cutting edge system. That's just for me personally. And also you can see just from my packages, my package list here, I don't really keep that many packages on my Linux computers. So it's very easy for me to just recreate a Linux image if something were to go wrong. Also, because I store all of my files in the cloud or on my personal home labs that I'm building, my home lab that I'm building, I don't really have a concern over losing data because not that much data actually lives on my computer. The computer I use is a Lenovo ThinkPad T14 Gen 2, if it wasn't obvious from the fact I have a T14 Gen 2 wallpaper. There's been a couple modifications to it. I have an upgraded battery to it. It has 32 gigs of memory and a 1 TB SSD, and I actually upgraded the trackpad in it from the regular plastic trackpad that it typically comes with to a nice glass trackpad. The display manager that I use is this thing called Neary. It's a very popular display manager because as you can see, as opposed to like regular managers, it actually is a scrolling window manager. So as you can see, my windows, as I go through my windows, when I go to the left and right, this is all one desktop. And then if I want to go to a different desktop, I just can use, a keybind and switch to a different desktop as needed. The way my setup primarily revolves is I usually have four things always open. I have my web browser open, and this is the browser that I use to, go through, look at stuff on GitHub or, documentation or anything like that. And I primarily use the Helium web browser. I had originally been on something more like Zen, but I recently switched to Helium just because I enjoyed it a lot better because it was a much faster web browser, didn't have the same not even security issues, it didn't have the same speed issues that I was experiencing on Zen or the Firefox derived web browsers. And so I've been on Helium for a while and I'm really happy with it. The only two extensions I really keep on Helium is, of course, the Obsidian Web Clipper to clip stuff as I find interesting articles or interesting things to learn about. I have that for my Obsidian database, and of course my password manager. The next thing I have always on my first desktop is I always have my Discord open. Usually it's because these are like the group chats that we use that I use to communicate with friends and other people, just talking about projects or anything else that might be going on. I know there's been a lot of blowback with Discord recently because of their proposed privacy changes that they've been making. They haven't really affected me yet. I have considered migrating to Matrix or like a different system, but I currently don't really have an incentive to do so, so I don't really see a need for it. The third thing that I always keep open, obviously, has to be my Obsidian workflow. I've already made a video kind of documenting my Obsidian setup, so I'm not going to go into too much detail about how it works. I have considered potentially doing a video kind of talking about how I set up Obsidian, because I know I have a lot of friends and people that I've talked to who are very interested in this kind of setup and want to learn more about how I do it. But as of right now, there isn't really any sort of real changes that have happened to my Obsidian setup since I last chatted. And that's what I usually keep on this first desktop. I don't really keep anything crazy on here. It's 3 windows, and I like keeping it to 3 windows max because it just makes it easy because I don't have that much visual clutter, and I usually run all of these apps full screen. I almost never am running apps minimized unless I need like a web browser to like grab stuff from my imaging or grab something from like documentation on for coding. Speaking of coding, actually moving on to what I keep on the second desktop, it's just the terminal. Unlike some people who prefer using like VS Code or VS Codium, or if you're a psychopath, you might use JetBrains. I actually just use NeoVim. I use NeoVim. I do use the LazyVim setup. I do run mostly defaults with a couple custom plugins, which you can see down here. Really, the only plugins I run is one for my theme. I use the One Dark theme from the old Atom text editor. Vicord slash core Vicord is really just for like rich text on Discord. So if I was to go to Discord right now, it'll actually say I'm currently in NeoVim actually, and it kind of live updates depending on what I'm working on. And the only other major plugin that I have is the Types to Preview. I use this because I write a lot of documents in types, and it's just a really easy way to kind of see how the document is looking formatting in real time. And that's pretty much the extent of my setup when it comes to LazyVim. Sometimes when I'm doing more, I don't want to say intensive coding sessions, but sometimes if I'm working on a different project, I'll open up some Zellige. This is my preferred terminal multiplexer, and what I'll do is I'll run NeoVim in one pane on Zellige, and I'll run Pi, which is my preferred coding agent, in the other one. There's nothing really too fancy about my setup here. It's just a very stereotypical Pi. I don't think I run barely any plugins on Pi. I think the big one I run is really just, if you even want to call it that, is just configuring it to only allow certain models to use, because there's certain models that I actually like, and there's a lot of models I don't like when it comes to coding agents. So I usually like to keep it to such things as like the Kimi agents or things like that. And if anyone's interested, I use the OpenRouter as my large language model support. That's really the extent of my terminal setup. I mean, some other terminal tools I sometimes use, I mean, obviously Git, Docker. I actually use Podman instead of Docker because, like I said, I was originally a Fedora / Red Hat Enterprise user, and I still believe that for 99% of people, Fedora / Red Hat is the better operating system or better Linux distribution. So for most people, I would recommend using that, which is kind of why I stick with, Podman style services. The only other major changes that I have to this system are not even changes, but I keep a little, obviously I have like the clock and my little waybar config, which is like what I use to configure my top bar. Over here, I have a little thing to keep track of my CPU, and I can see like the cores for all my CPUs, keep track of my total RAM usage. Those are like the two things I'm most concerned with whenever I'm using my computer, is making sure that I have enough memory, especially because I compile Rust programs a lot, as well as my Bluetooth. I use a terminal application for it actually called Bluetooth. My Wi-Fi I use uses the Impala network manager for my terminal user interface for managing Wi-Fi and stuff like that. This is the WireMix plugin for managing my my audio configuration, and then of course my battery indication, but my laptop is currently plugged in, so it's going to say I'm plugged in right now. If people are interested in copying my configuration or even my dot files or anything like that, I actually keep all of them here in this Linux dots repository that you can see on my GitHub. It actually also includes a kickstart.sh script, which includes a script for not only installing all of my most used packages, but it also will configure the computer the exact same way that I use a computer. So you'll see I install some terminal related things such as the Yay Arch user repository, PyDev, OMyZSH for my ZSH configurations, Starship. That's an absolute must for me, is Starship, because that's how I get my really nice looking views for my little indications here of where I am, like what Git branch I'm on and stuff like that. And then of course my ZSH syntax highlighting. I don't think there's anything else major in my system. I kind of keep things, the big thing with me is I like keeping my system as minimal as possible. As you can see, from a bare bones Arch install to this, it's not really that many packages. And, I kind of just, I install Arch Linux, I encrypt my drive, and then I just download this script and I just let it rip. That's pretty much how I configure computers. And there's nothing too fancy about my Arch Linux setup. Like I don't have like a crazy modified setup. I definitely prioritize simplicity over performance or anything like that because I just want things to work. I don't really care how good it looks. I just want it to look semi decent. But that's the extent of my setup. So hope you guys enjoyed.